Coming to you from the city of the weird. Exploring topics from the esoteric and unexplored to dimensions unknown. Shining a light of truth on the darkest corners of our reality. Welcome to the Curious Realm.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to the Curious Realm's continuing coverage of the International Remote Viewings Association's 25th anniversary cruise right here on the Mariner of the Seas. We have the great pleasure of being joined by remote viewer Michelle Freed.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to the show. How are you?
Good, good. So we're in the middle of a hurricane. You didn't say anything about that.
Well, we are chasing the tail of it.
We're rocking.
Yeah,
rolling.
there has been more sway today than there has been in the boat the last few days.
Yeah.
And
Did you feel like at night?
Oh yeah. The stutters and the shaking and
Yeah.
things like that. It was
sure.
interesting running through the buffer of the back end of it.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, because it's rotating one way, and we're actually coming in the direction of rotation, so directly into the buffer of the wind.
Oh,
is what that
that's
was.
what that is.
Sheets hitting. When we were upstairs last night, it was literally just sheets of water rolling across the club.
Yeah.
It was wild.
Yeah, we
just
went
blankets.
We went out on our balcony, and you can see the white caps and all that stuff. So, and they're saying this is like the biggest hurricane of all time so far.
Recorded.
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that would be larger would be the 1900 storm that literally destroyed Galveston.
Right. That's true.
Where thousands and thousands of people died.
Yeah.
Which is what makes Galveston the haunted place that it is.
Yes. That's
but
so true.
We have known each other for years. It's so great to finally have you on the show. So great to finally have time at an IRVA conference for you to be able to take some time.
Yeah.
How long have you been in the community of remote viewing, Michelle?
Well, I would over 10 years. I know,
wow.
like 10 to 12 or something like that.
Okay.
So.
And how did you first come to remote viewing?
So I was taking a psychic development class by Deborah Lynn Katz.
Okay.
We grew up together, and she was always trying to get me to do this stuff. And I'm like, this is crazy. And so I'm like, it was the right timing, you know how things go.
Yeah.
So I took her class, and one of the classes, she was like, let's experiment with something. And she was just playing with us. Like, all we do is play. Like, 6-year-olds, because that's where you want to be in your psychic mind.
That's right.
Very young and children and playful and stuff like that. So anyway, it just resonated with me. The minute that she gave us a target, everything just clicked in for me, and I just seemed to just do well at it. And so as people kept seeing my sessions, they asked me to, be part of more groups. And so I ended up, working with government and finding missing people and NASA, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
now, this is something that I ask pretty regularly. Was the world of mediumship, anything like that, something that you were prone to prior to working in remote viewing?
Not really.
No?
No, I think I was always a spiritual person, but I wasn't into any of this stuff.
Yeah, you weren't intuitive in any kind of way.
I mean, I was intuitive in the way of I understood people very well, and I couldn't explain how I understood them. I knew, I could read vibes from people.
All right.
And I never knew at the time. It's just in retrospect when I always get asked, like, did you ever have any kind of anything happened to you when you were younger or whatever? I'm like, no, nothing.
And that's what I tell people is the closest thing is I would probably be empathic. Because,
maybe.
Whenever I worked retreats, I could always, as soon as the kids walked in the room, I could tell the one that needed the attention and the love that we
Right. And it seemed normal, right?
Yeah.
Like, it didn't seem like an unusual thing. It was just part of.
Well, and it's one of those things, when I entered the seminary, it was definitely one of the reasons why they were looking at me as a confessor. Also why they were looking at me for youth ministry work, things like that. People just naturally seem to be disarmed around me. Barriers drop and they talk.
Right, exactly.
And it's interesting, but that's as close as I could ever say to psychic.
Right.
Now that I know that that is within that realm.
Exactly. Yeah,
But
for sure.
now, have you noticed since then that you're, I guess, more tuned into the world of clairvoyance, things like that? That you have you noticed any premonitions, things like that, that have occurred since beginning your remote viewing journey?
I guess for me, I'm on a mission. So I'm really focused on my mission, which
Okay.
is really kind of getting people to understand that we're more than this, and that the path to do that is some kind of remote viewing or something in that,
Sure.
you know, where you're working towards that. I also went to school for hypnosis,
Mm.
and I learned a lot about how the mind works, your subconscious, and
Yeah.
all that stuff. And so a lot of times I teach a class in remote viewing, and it started out it started out as transdimensional systems,
Mm.
which was created by Prudence Calabrese, if I said that right. Anyway, and I've evolved it because of this playfulness. I'm always doing, let's try this, let's try that.
Yeah.
And when we experiment, I kind of move remote viewing forward. So we have all the guys that are the military, and they really stick to the protocol that was originally set in the military.
Yeah.
But over time, I think I'm learning that sometimes being a little more open to different personality, because I feel like remote viewing is an extension of your personality. So for
Yes.
example, if you're an introverted person and your target is people, you might not see people. You might just see the action going on, or maybe an object or something else other than people, because you're introverted.
Or even feel the emotions instead of seeing the people.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think because we're all so different in that way, I think you have to kind of make remote viewing, you have to have a structure to some degree, because we want to stick to some kind of science-based or something consistent. Okay. And then
a reportable means.
Exactly. Yeah. And which you would know about. The little plug for you.
That's my mission.
That's right. Exactly. And that's the thing. I think it's time that we move this into the mainstream.
We have to. We have to. You know, it's one of those, like I said in my speech, most people associate it with either psychic spying, which of course, you know, the movie Third Eye Spies and the books that came out, things like that have done fantastic to expose the world to the world of remote viewing. Like I said, I heard about it years ago with Art Bell, and ordered the videotape. I still have the SRI videotape.
Oh my gosh.
I should mount it in a shadow box. You know.
Too bad. Wait, maybe we can get him to sign it.
You know, oh, that would be awesome. That would be cool.
Automatic writing from beyond.
But seriously, you know, it's like that's how it was. It was mail order. It was shows like that. You know, like if you weren't listening to Art Bell, or even at the time, if you weren't following Dow News, you know, because that was right up around at the time of the declassification in '95, was a couple years later, was when the headlines hit, you know, like psychics predict the silver market.
Right.
You know,
exactly.
and they were completely riding the wave of the silver market. And it's interesting to see that, yes, there are numerous hedge fund companies that utilize remote viewers.
Yeah.
There are numerous precious metal companies. The company last year in Virginia that was doing space mining. They had remote viewers finding things in space to be able to mine for precious metals and things like that. It's pretty remarkable what the possibilities are.
Absolutely, I agree.
Now, when it comes to let's start getting into technique a little bit, and how you go about teaching your classes and teaching people this technique of reception.
The one thing that I kind of repeat over and over again, because I'm sure you do too, people come up to you and say, well, if you're psychic, why aren't you a millionaire? And so I have an answer for that, actually.
Please.
So Joe McMoneagle, who worked in the original Stargate program, he made a comment to me. He said, you know, Michelle, if you want to be a world-class remote viewer, you need to give up what it is to be human.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the heck is he talking? I'm an alien? Like, I was like, what do you mean? And so I really thought about it, and I'm like, oh, I know what he means. When you're psychic, and this is not just for remote viewing, but any time that we're being psychic, we are in our subconscious mind. And the subconscious does not understand language as we know it. It understands symbols, and it understands emotions.
Yeah.
And so our left brain is responsible for finding patterns, which is what we needed when we were primitive.
That's
you know,
right.
we needed to hunt and gather. And so we needed that part.
Yeah.
And that's what he meant by human part.
That's right.
So until we learn how to kind of marry the left and right brain and how they can work together, then that will make us be all millionaires and whatever. But right now, we need to keep practicing. We need to keep pushing through the ceiling, and you know, it's a lot of work. So that's why we're not 100% accurate.
Well, and there's also within that accuracy range, as we were talking about with Greg the other day, there's the quantum time aspect as well. Just because you have viewed a silver market doing this on this day doesn't mean that a boat with a crap ton of silver on it isn't going to sink in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
And that isn't going to change what happens on that day.
Right.
Something mediating in between could absolutely happen to make that not happen.
Right. And if we want to nerd out and go into the quantum world.
Oh, well, that's exactly what you're going to be talking about. So let's go there.
Yeah. So in the quantum world, we're talking. So this could, if you observe something, it will behave differently,
That's
right?
right.
So there are people that have worked on projects with the government about terrorist attacks.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are putting your eyes on a future event, can you change it? Can it not happen the way you perceive it to happen because you looked on it?
Yeah.
Did you influence it? You know, that's where we're talking remote influencing.
It's literally the source of remote viewing is the concept of scientists going home and thinking about their experiment and adversely affecting it in the lab by thinking about it.
Right.
You know?
To me, it's like the visual of like, you can't grab something.
That's right.
It's like, oh.
Like trying to grab the wind.
Exactly. That's what it's like.
It is.
For sure.
It is. And, you know, it's fascinating when you start thinking about that. And that's one reason why I titled my presentation, The First Dimensional Science. Because I think it is, I believe it is science. We have way too much data for it not to be a science. I mean, we have scientific protocols for doing it at a lab. So that makes it a science when you can poke and prod things. And
yeah, it's a little challenging because we don't necessarily have all the correct tools to measure and quantify things that are, you know, intangible.
And at the same token, I will parry and thrust that with the fact of science also cannot quantifiably discount it either. So
there's a lot of people that don't like that.
But when you're talking about, like I said in my presentation, I want more red circles.
Yeah.
Give me more red circles, because the more red circles we have, the more known quantitative we have, which only leaves the anomaly to investigate.
Right.
So eventually it will come to the fact of, well, yeah, this has to be a pretty decent possibility.
Exactly.
You know? And yes, we may someday find the subtle means by which to find those things, you know, but until then, it's the concept of, we know that there are other dimensions. We know that these things exist. CERN has confirmed this. And the idea of us being vibration, the idea of being, like you said, when we go to sleep, our minds do different things.
Right.
You know, they're releasing all kinds of things that we autonomically went through the day and did not process.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
I think, you know, a thing that we don't talk enough about in remote viewing, all this stuff like helping the government, helping find missing people, getting intel, government, and whatever, but also connecting with your higher self.
Yes.
This is also very much part of my mission. Is I think that that's what's going to break us through.
Yeah.
And learning how to pay attention, like that seems to be my theme lately, is pay attention. Because I think, you know, when we use our body like a sensory system, I think we need to be better at that. You know, when we feel something, or any kind of little tingly you get, if you kind of lean into that and figure out what is the origin of why my pinky's tingling, or that's a question. And I think, you know, we really need to be focusing on how we can, you know, we can heal ourselves mentally and physically. We can, you know, do all sorts of things like that. And I think we need to be putting a lot of more attention on that. And that's what's going to really move us.
When I taught 7th to 11th grade spirituality and religion and things, one of the things that I taught my kids regularly was the kite string. Follow the kite string. You will feel it pull on the back of your belly button.
Yeah.
And when you do, stop.
Right.
Stop in your tracks. It's a moment for a decision.
Right.
You either need to follow or you need to run.
Right. Exactly.
You either need to get far away from that vibration or you need to go to it. But you need to learn to recognize when that kite string gets pulled on the backside of your belly button.
Exactly.
And it'll change your life when you learn to just stop and realize that, like, whoa, wait a minute. Something's happening here.
Yeah.
Like I've run into a confluence of the universe, into a tidal wave, what have you.
Yeah, and I think you have a very highly intelligent listenership out there, okay? And I think they understand that, you know, all these things are what's going to take us. So I will always say to myself, well, I was going to say AOL, which is an analytical overlay.
Yeah.
This is where that left brain, right brain starts, like, you know, getting in trouble. And it's when we draw a conclusion or making an assumption.
Yeah.
So I have been noticing that I'm taking my lessons from the protocol of remote viewing and moving it into my everyday life.
Yeah.
So I have turned AOL into a verb. Because I've noticed, like, there are a lot of times where we draw conclusions with our personal life or make assumptions, and now we are AOLing. Yeah, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so now I say, okay, you know, I pay attention. I realize that I'm AOLing. Now I say, okay, what would the 2.0 Michelle do or say in this situation? That's what I mean by, like, taking these lessons and moving them into your everyday life.
Absolutely.
Not just like, this is remote viewing time.
Well, yeah, but it's also the fact of understanding that we emotionally overlay all kinds of things. We assume and really put onto other people a lot of things that they ain't trying to say. You know, that we have analytically overlaid from other parts of our life that now we're assuming that they're trying to get in under the radar or something like that. It's like, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
And, you know, kind of the example would be in the Outbounder that we did. This was the example that I gave in Carl's of why I need a monitor, you know, because I started analytic overlay.
Yeah.
I'm a tech guy. The first thing this was the Keith Haring piece, and I got building, concrete, artificial light, because our task was location and what was happening there. That's all that I got of the location. Everything else was, after that was power.
Yeah.
And then I drew a square and a circle and like rays coming off the circle and these lines that I immediately started going down.
You're building a whole story.
Oh, no, I started building a whole power plant. And when I saw the picture, like, I had basically drawn the UFO from the picture. Like, here's the square picture, here's the UFO, here's stuff coming out of it. And it was like, wow.
It's because
I was on the right path. Had I had a monitor there,
Yeah, no.
They could have.
I mean,
They could have
maybe.
at least been like, okay, well,
But usually the monitors don't know what the target is.
That's true
So,
too.
but I would say so. I had.
But even the fact of me saying, "Oh, that's a power plant," a good monitor would have been, "Let's don't go there.
Yeah.
Let's get back on track of feeling."
Yeah.
And
Your
things like that,
senses.
instead of going analytic as to what I think I'm
Right.
seeing.
Yeah, and here's another example. I was working with Homeland Security back in 2019, a year before the 2020 Olympics. And I had no clue I was working with Homeland Security, and I didn't know we were looking at the Olympics. And I guess what they wanted was they wanted to know what the top threats were.
Yeah.
So I did a session. The first part of my session kind of went into this idea of debris everywhere, and so I wasn't sure. It was like a land and water interface, and there was chaos everywhere, but I wasn't sure if it was weather related. And then I had a plot twist in my session where I was like, now in kind of an office environment looking at a computer, and I said computer virus. And so hand it in. Then I find out it's Homeland Security. I find out they want to know top threats, and then I forgot about it. So then COVID hit and everything, blah, 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 blah. In 2021, I was doing my dishes, washing, and I was like, hey, I wonder whatever happened to that session. And I went, wait a minute, AOL. I said computer virus because in 2019, the furthest thing from my mind was an organic virus
would a pandemic
would stop some kind of Olympics, right? And so that was a huge example to me of how this works and how this happens.
Yeah.
And so, we need to get we need to get better at that too.
And you know, how can we begin that process? How can people who are remote viewers begin the process of kind of omitting the analytic overlay?
Well, I think that there's a place for it. It's just that you have to learn to find its place, and every time you feel like you're getting into this idea of building a story around something, then you kind of pull back, you take a break, and then you go back to basics and you say, what do I feel? What do I see? What do I sense? Things like that. So that's really, I think that's how you do it. And my talk tomorrow is really going to be focusing on paying attention. And so we're going to do some fun stuff. And
I can't wait.
Butts out of the seats.
Well, we had fun the other night. Like you said earlier in the interview, you enjoy incorporating the childlike aspect. And even as we were having drinks the other night after dinner, things like that, it was like, what kind of fun can we have? So it became everybody meditate for a minute. And when we say so, first object that pops into your mind, we're going to go down into the casino and find it.
Right.
And when you find it on a machine, play it. And what was interesting is there were probably about 7 of us there.
Yeah.
Probably about 5 of us ended up playing. I did not find my object. Carl didn't find his. I'll be looking for it in Vegas next week.
Okay, time doesn't...
Because it doesn't mean it was supposed to be now. It just means casino and object.
We didn't say.
We didn't give it a definition of time.
No, we didn't.
So, it could be for later.
Okay.
But out of the 5 that played, I know of at least 2 that won.
I won $30.
I know one that won a little bit more than that.
Really?
The only difference was she kept playing and she lost.
Oh, yeah. I know.
Had
you have
fun,
to know
kept playing, things like that.
What is that song? You gotta
know when to hold them. That's right.
Yeah.
But that's just it. Had the discipline of, hey, I won. I'm up good. I'm out.
Right.
Yes. Absolutely, it worked.
Yeah, for sure.
They went to that machine. They only played that machine, and they won. They kept playing and lost.
Yeah, but
they won.
Yeah.
So it's pretty fascinating to even see that, even out of that percentage of people, won decently.
Yeah.
On what
That's
they were
so
playing.
Good. Right.
So it was interesting to see.
I think the subconscious operates from the child.
Yeah.
And that's where you're most accurate, in that place.
Yeah. And, that explains a lot, especially whenever you start talking about dreams, dream work, things like that. The way that our mind reprocesses the daily data
Mhm.
and reveals that to us in our dreams. And
Yeah.
it's interesting. If you That's actually one of my next books, is a like lucid dreaming journal,
Oh, okay.
for people that practice lucid dreaming, that kind of stuff. So because it is fascinating where those two things, and I think that there's been some good work there, but I think there needs to be a little bit more done with the idea
Yeah.
of, because even Pam Coronado, her career began with a premonition dream
Right.
that ended up leading to a literal murderer.
Mhm.
That's
That
pretty
happens a
wild.
lot.
That's
Yeah.
pretty
A
wild.
lot of my students will ask me, I have this premonition and it's really nagging at me, and they're like, "Well, who do I call? What do I do?" And we're not there yet. That's the thing, is like, who do we call?
Yeah.
Nobody's going to believe it. So
Mm.
my suggestion
Well,
is anybody that has a premonition, either keep a journal, but what's even better is keep like a video log, like a vlog,
mm,
or post it, even though it might be a little embarrassing, whatever, like, because if it, we all want
yeah.
perfection, but just post it on Facebook, because then it's dated and time stamped.
Well, and that's another prime example of why you need a good research buddy. Because at that point, yeah, even if you don't want to share it with social media, you could text it to them in a
Yeah, but I'm
message,
thinking about getting
something
it
like
out
that.
in the world,
Mm,
because if we,
true.
put it out there, we can point back. Look how many times that this person predicted, and you can't argue with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's like little baby steps getting us into the mainstream.
Yeah,
I think that's
absolutely.
the ticket.
It really is, and that's just it. It's how do we bring remote viewing to the mass consciousness, and then that's kind of how I wrapped my talk the other day. Was it? Hey, do we tell the world? I think it's onus upon us to tell the world.
For
You know,
sure.
I mean, no different than coming down from the mountain.
Right.
Like, you're coming down for a reason. It's supposed to be to shout the message that you heard up there.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
know, so how do we ignite this fire in people? How do we get them to understand that they are a greater part of a quantum realm, that they do quantumly entangle
Right.
with things and people across the world?
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's fascinating. Thank you so much for the time, Michelle.
Oh my
It's
gosh,
been great.
it was fun.
Uh,
It's always good to talk to you.
Thanks. Same here. Same here. I love
You're
the
a
time that
smart
we get to
cookie.
spend. Oh, I appreciate it. A little crummy, but
Little
let
crummy.
everybody know where they can go to find out more information, not only about remote viewing in IRVA, but about you, and where they can go and take your classes.
So butterflyeffectcenter.com. And there goes the voice. Yeah, check the schedule on the website. And if you have any questions, there's a contact form
Awesome.
and all that fun stuff.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it. Absolutely. Wow, you are online checking everything from butterflyeffectcenter.com and Michelle Freed. Make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is where you can like, follow, subscribe, and share. It's where you can find all of our live videos on our events page. That's also where you can find your copy of the observation and encounter log from Curious Research. When we come back from this quick commercial break, we will have our waning coverage of the International Remote Viewing Association Conference live from the Mariner of the Seas right after this.
The key to good science is good research. At the heart of good research is a good data set. With the field observation and encounter log from Curious Research, you can easily keep track of your investigative information all in one place, making it easier to review cases and readily see comparisons and contrasts between them. Whether out in the woods squatching, in a back room gathering EVPs, or using high-tech gear to track UFO, UAP activity, this easy-to-carry, pocket-sized scientific data log is the perfect companion for any field researcher. You can find your copy of the Curious Research Field Observation and Encounter Log at Amazon.com or visit the official Curious Realm store at curiousrealm.com/store to reserve your copy for yourself, your family, or a mind that you want to open. That website again is curiousrealm.com/store.